transforming lives.
Inspiring stories from educators worldwide.
Impact happening worldwide. Your transformation starts here.
Hey everyone, I know you're here looking for Tony. Don't worry, he'll be with you in just a moment. Quiero dar la bienvenida a mi comunidad hispana al Transforming Lives podcast. A veces nos encontramos con barreras, pero sabemos que con determinación siempre seguimos adelante. Hoy, Tony hablará con la doctora Margarita Tovar. Estoy seguro de que su historia nos inspirará y nos recordará la importancia de la educación y la perseverancia. Thank you for being here. Tony will join you in just a second. Let's get started.
All right. Gracias for that introduction in Spanish. Hey, it's been about 20 years. I did take a class in college, a half a semester, but listen, here's the great thing about the world we live in. You have to make transitions and you kick away excuses, right? So I wanted to put an excuse out there that I was unable, but again, we have tools now that we're able to make things happen. So I'm excited about making that happen. Hopefully there were no kinks in there. You definitely let me know. So here's what I need for you all to do. Let me know where you all are chiming in from, okay? I'm in Mississippi right now and would love to know where you're chiming in from. And I want to go ahead and introduce my guest. You heard a little bit, you heard her name, but I'm going to go ahead and give her the proper introduction. All right. So Dr. Margarita Tovar is a lifelong learner, an educator, a daughter of immigrants, current chief talent officer of the Colorado Department of Education, overseeing educator preparation, educator development, educator effectiveness, licensing, enforcement, early childhood workforce development, and human resource teams. Most recently, she served as the chief talent officer in the Summit School District, where she led a transformation of human resource teams and served as an integral member of the superintendent's cabinet. She started her career as a bilingual paraprofessional and later served as a teacher, turnaround principal, a principal supervisor of turnaround schools. And based on her life and her professional experiences, she's worked with urgency and purpose to address the educational barriers that deter students and communities from reaching their highest potential and aspirations. God, look, if you just heard her, the introduction, you know this is going to be an excellent conversation. I'd like to welcome to the stage my guest, Dr. Margarita Tovar.
Buenas tardes, good evening. That introduction was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for adapting and transforming the way that you start your podcast to welcome our bilingual community. That was perfect. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
All right, I got the okay. So I got the thumbs up. All right. So we made that happen. So usually I ask everyone, how's the weather where you are?
Well, right now, so I'm in Houston, Texas currently. That's my home state. I work in Colorado, but I was born and raised in Houston. And if you know Houston, you know it's unpredictable. You can experience all 4 seasons in one day. So this morning it was cold, and this afternoon it's warm and foggy, all at the same time.
So that sounds about like Mississippi. It's like, okay, I have my little long sleeves on, but you just never know what the weather's going to be at any point of the day. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to go ahead and jump into our questions, because when we even preparing for this interview, this podcast, you notice that I had to make a pivot to say, okay, am I going to get on here and be able to roll my tongue correctly and get out the proper words, right? And I said, you know what? Let me think through this process. What can I do differently that will allow viewers that would be on to hear and to make that connection? So, I want to hear your story. I want you to share your story. Yeah, your personal and professional experiences. and how they shape you and how those challenges, how you overcame those challenges and your major successes. I know I gave you 3 parts. You work it how you feel like you want to work it.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say I'm a daughter of immigrants first because that makes up my identity. It makes up who I am at the core. It shifts my values, and it also helps me determine which opportunities, as it relates to professional opportunities, I decide to embark on. My story starts in Houston, as I mentioned. My parents were immigrants that came as an opportunity under the 1984 amnesty for farmers. And so they've always instilled in me the incredible ability to work harder than anyone around you, and that every single job is a job worth doing. There is no task too small to do it to perfection and to the utmost excellence, because every opportunity is worthwhile if you're doing it for the right reasons. And so that value of hard work, determination, excellence, commitment has propelled me in ways that I never knew I could reach. I was a bilingual paraprofessional working 2 jobs. I was a bartender at night on the weekends. I was a teaching assistant during the day, going to school in the evening. And I thought that the top of my career would be to become a teacher. And that would have been longer and further than everyone in my family. And we're a large family. I have 500 cousins. There were 500 guests at my quinceañera. So that's a large family. And
Right, correct.
yeah, and just being a daughter of what I call educational orphans. My parents did not go beyond 6th grade. And so after 6th grade, I had no guidance at home as it relates to college, being financially able to pay for higher education. So when I became a teacher, I was lucky to find mentors that saw in me more than what I saw in myself. And they poured into me. They gave me opportunities and saw the leadership nature that I have. And I became a principal at 27. I had no business leading a campus at 27, but I got the opportunity. That same year, I lost my husband during Hurricane Harvey, and I had a choice. I could carry on this journey and this massive uptaking that I was given the opportunity to carry out, or I could step back and grieve in silence. And I decided to push through. And there have been moments in my career and my life that they become crossroads that I look back and I think, wow, life could have gone totally different for me had I chosen a different career pathway. But these moments have made me resilient and again have enabled me to go beyond my current beliefs about what I can achieve. And so that propelled me again to move to a small rural town named Corsicana, Texas, and do some turnaround transformational work there. Then I had the opportunity to come to Colorado about 3 years ago and work at the cabinet level in a human resources position. And now I work at the state for the state of Colorado, leading statewide recruitment, retention, development, licensure, all the things that you mentioned, working with stakeholders, legislators on policies and implementing them to ensure that we have the highest quality educators in our schools. And so my journey has been a long one. It's not over yet. And I am just grateful that you've given me this platform to share a little bit about it.
Oh, wow. So thank you so much for sharing that. And just this time that you shared what from the beginning to this particular point, a resounding word that has been just coming up with the guests I've had on is resilience. Having resilience, this characteristic, this character trait that you have to have. And oh my goodness, from you said 27 and a principal, and I was like, oh, but then this other part of professional part, but then you have the personal part
Mhm.
of having to walk through that tragic event in your life. So, my condolences. Wow, that's
Thank you.
yeah. I commend you for your efforts to push forward, because that's kind of an exit where you just say, hey, I'm just not going to do these things. This is because I'm feeling this.
Mhm.
But I definitely give you. I'm gonna see if this works right here. It didn't work, but that's okay. I'll give you the clap.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome right there. My clap tones didn't work, but that's okay. So that kind of pushes us into this whole idea of being a Hispanic leader. When I think about culture in our nation, there are different cultures, and as an educator, you should adapt. For me in Mississippi, it was, the Hispanic population um, increased a lot. So you have those, Hispanic students in classes. And it's like, listen, it doesn't matter what background you have.
Mhm.
I signed up to be an educator. I want to make sure that you get that proper education. So as a Hispanic leader, how has, your personal experience shaped your vision of supporting students and educators?
Thank you for that question. It's a timely one, especially given our political climate. And, what I share with folks is first and foremost, we have to be educated. We like to say that we're advocates and that we are leaders and we're all of this. You cannot advocate for something you're not fully equipped and educated to advocate on. And so, as it relates to Hispanic students, we must first do the self work to
Mhm.
thoroughly understand what it means to be Hispanic. Do you understand the difference between Hispanic and Latino, for example? There's nuances there, right?
Yeah.
Hispanic is any person that is of a Spanish origin, where in their country they speak Spanish. So that includes some Europeans, like Spaniards.
Yeah.
If you call a European a Latino, you are miscategorizing them, and that probably will not go well for you. And so there's context there, right?
Yeah.
That we carry within the Hispanic community, within us, and the Latino community, that it has a lot of misinformation. And every opportunity that I have with every person that's willing to learn, I love to share, my experience being a Latina, being a Hispanic student, being a bilingual student in a
Yes.
traditional non-bilingual pathway, so being fully immersed into the American educational system.
Yes.
But we must have that humility to ask questions, be educated, form an opinion, and then advocate to make change in our systems. And so, right now, particularly, one topic that we must all be incredibly sensible towards is immigration. We understand that we are getting ready to go through a political context that might impact our Latino and our Hispanic families. And it's time that we put our heads down, read, be informed, uh, be very mindful of where you consume your media, and get educated with basic immigration concepts. For example, what percentage of your parents in your building work in factories that might experience some traumatic events coming up? That
Right.
is a simple fact that you can Google as a campus leader, and I know many, if not most, are doing that to prepare
Yeah.
for these next coming months and years. And so, this type of cultural tact and humility is really what distinguishes the good versus the great leaders, and the leaders that the communities will remember for years to come. We have to prepare ourselves to experience hard times and
Mhm.
people in our communities will be looking to us to see what we're doing, how we're acting, and how we're leading in these times. So again, resilience, right? I believe that while there is a narrative that we must be vulnerable as leaders, we have to be also strong. And we are given that cross to carry as a leader. It's not easy. You are the person in charge of that community. And that's something that I don't take lightly. And I know leaders don't take lightly. And we're going to need a lot of resilience right now.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, because you educated me quickly on how I should address, because it's one thing about, and I believe that it's important to understand the culture before you try to educate in general academically, because if you don't, you end up trying to force feed something into someone that they don't necessarily buy into. And they don't do that in marketing. And not saying that, education is marketing, but just saying, that is a facet of being an educator. You have to market this, whether it's math or whatever it might be. You have to market it in a way that it is received and they buy into it. So, thank you for giving me the distinction between of saying a Hispanic leader and Latino, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. So now that's programmed into my brain and how I approach future conversations. So yeah.
I'm glad that's helpful. And another misconception that I find often, I experienced this when I arrived at 6 years old and I was in a kindergarten classroom. There's a misconception that immigrant students come without a lack of academic foundation. Yes, some of the countries where some of the students we're receiving are in dire political tension. That doesn't mean, though, that they have not been exposed to academic concepts. When I arrived here, I knew how to read and to write by the age of 6 at a first grade level in Spanish. But obviously in English, I did not even know the ABCs. And for the longest time, I would go home crying and telling my mom, I know I'm smart in Spanish, but I am very dumb in English. And I could see her, swallow that pain, when your child tells you something and
Right.
but you have to be strong for them. And she was like, that determination that you had to be the best in your kindergarten class and your pre-K class in Mexico, you still have that, no matter the language that you speak. So you are going to become the smartest person in your classroom now in English, and you will be twice as smart and you will be twice as valuable. But I always have that in my mind, that experience that I had as a child, being diagnosed as, she's not on grade level.
Yeah.
And how that marked me. And so that always really shapes how I lead when I am interacting with leaders and teachers, and they make some comments that I can sense there's a little bit of maybe judgment on the context where students may be coming from.
And you are doing a great job of establishing this context, because in school systems we talk about these stakeholders, right? So I think and always believe that parents are one of the most important stakeholder of the three. But to hear your story of how you expressing that I do have the ability, that I am smart, but I have a huge barrier right here, language barrier, that is causing me not to see the fruits or the results that I would like to see. And it's like, for me, I have students that are going through my head right now of you think that you're doing enough by maybe doing a translator or doing whatever. But there's another level here of the emotional and the emotional intelligence that's there, that they have to interact with their parents, that maybe we maybe we just did not understand, because that just took me in a different place, that you told me that story about your interaction with your mother.
Mhm.
So that adds another layer to the barriers that you have to face, because it's like, well, who do I talk to when I go to school? Because you don't understand the
Well,
barriers that I'm facing right now.
the barriers and the bridges, right? I mean, our parents are our bridges as well.
Yeah.
And, when I was a leader in Fifth Ward, Houston, predominantly African American community, I also had to learn a lot about the culture and basic things that I was doing that were maybe not received with my intention. I had to shift. And so, as leaders, we have to remain reflective and open to welcoming ideas, comments, feedback, of every single move and every single word that comes out of your mouth, every single second that you're in front of the people that you lead is up to interpretation, and therefore it is up to judgment. And we should be mindful, but we should also be receptive. And I love that you're very willing to, no matter how long you've been in the educational field, still remain humble enough to be adaptive.
Right. It's important, because and everybody doesn't necessarily carry that same thought pattern, but I just know the importance of the impact. When I look at the top 5 people that had that impacted my life, they're educators. So yeah, and they were very adaptive. So I'm curious to hear. I've heard some of the challenges that you've talked about, but what are some of the challenges currently in our current society that Hispanic, Latino students are facing, bilingual students are facing, as they're in schools right now?
Thank you for framing the question around Latino students. I'm going to maybe take this in a different direction, because there's something in addition to race that for me is a passion, and that's poverty. And, it's one thing to experience discrimination based on the color of your skin. It's another thing to experience discrimination based on your hunger and your level of wealth and the level of opportunities that are predetermined for you based on the zip code where you're from. And so I like to say, if you've never had government beans, I don't think you can make significant change for communities that grew up like me. Because you'll never experience that hunger, that poverty marks you with for the rest of your life. And so the challenges that I see that students in poverty are experiencing right now probably boil down to 2 main things, in my opinion, that are top priority. Number 1 is rigor. And while we, growing up in disadvantaged situations that are economically challenging, already creates a lot of hardship for us. We cannot get to school and then experience low expectations and experience conformity and experience people that might put upon us this limitation of what we can achieve. And until this day, there has not been one study that shows us that intelligence is correlated to poverty or to economic stability. Your opportunities are, but not intelligence. And so that is a passion of mine. I love to preach Soretta Hammond's work around culturally responsive teaching and learning, because she talks about the importance of, yes, developing a foundation that creates a safe environment in order for you to be able to push a student, in order for you to be able to get that rigor, in order for you to be able to expect and have what she calls a warm demander command over your classroom. And so I think that right now, particularly, I'm a little bit worried that the national conversation sometimes tends to be very much, let's focus on the whole child in the social emotional space without really talking about the importance of rigor, also aligned to emotional safety and well-being. So that's one. And then two, still until this day, segregation exists. And years later, we are still experiencing segregated communities, segregated spaces, segregated classrooms, segregated buildings. And we can say that we value equity, we can say that we value opportunity, but if I walk into a building and there is a hallway that has low rigor happening, and then across that hallway, there's a different set of kids with different set of experiences within that same building, that's segregation, and that is inequity. I know that we talk about zip codes and the inequities that exist, across communities, but let's start small. Which in our buildings, we know which teachers are not pushing the students to their fullest capacity. We know which teachers are pulling lesson plans out of Google or ChatGPT without vetting them through. Lack of rigor, lack of expectation is happening. And we must not fall into this cycle of allowing mediocrity from the educators that are right in front of our children right now. And so I think those two things are the things that are impacting Latino students, but then students in poverty overall.
Right. So you did an excellent job of pointing out those key components. And, with doing the 50 educators from 50 states, these type of conversations can come up and will come up, but I admire for you establishing what you believe right now, because it's the same thing in Mississippi, where you have to have expectations for students, and you set them high and not low, because again, you're around that child 8 hours a day, 6 hours, whatever the time is. You're around that child a lot. So establishing these and speaking to poverty is it's a barrier that I had to be transformed, being teaching in the Mississippi Delta, and everybody has this whole conversation about that. But listen to me. It was one of the most excellent times that I had in my teaching career. Number one, some things you don't have do not limit you. Although you get to a point where you do get them. But some things that you consider, I don't have this, I'm limited. No, that's not really true. I can take what I have and use what I have and be effective with that and continue to move forward. Now, that does not mean that I should get less. But yeah, that's a little passionate of mine. I'm gonna come back and go ahead.
And I love that you say that, because I have had the privilege of leading in the lowest income zip code in the city of Houston, 77026, and the richest zip code in Colorado. And rigor can be established whether you have a blackboard or a whiteboard or the most fanciest touchscreen. Rigor can be established whether you have the top of the line new building that you just passed with a bond, or whether you are in the trailers. Now, is that fair? No, absolutely not. In the richest country in the world, there should not exist these inequities within our public school system. So I agree that we are experiencing inequities, but I don't agree that our current conditions are so dire that we have to give up expectations for students, especially me going to school in Mexico, seeing what true poverty is. For breakfast, we had one cookie that the government gave us and one carton of milk. So when I arrived my first day in public school in America, and I got a lunch menu, and this was in Spring Branch, Houston, poor school district as well. I got a lunch menu that I could choose cereal or kolache that morning. I told my mom, this is Disneyland, right? This is what you were saying that we would find in America. So
Oh,
I think that having real exposure to dire conditions and then having this opportunity to lead in some of the wealthiest areas in Colorado, I think that has solidified the idea that no matter how much money we throw at the problem, it doesn't take care of the core needs that a child needs from their educator.
that's a topic. That's a whole topic
That's a
within
whole
itself.
podcast.
Right. I'm gonna pause there because I want to go there because you can throw money and not being intentional, setting up structures to effectively stop Tony. Okay. That's a whole podcast right there because it's important that you set things up to win. And in those systems, like you said earlier, it could be a level of feedback to say, okay, this is not effective. This is not working. But you touch me again back to this comparison of being in Mexico and coming to the United States, of what you were given, what you had, and what this perspective changed for you of a menu where some may take it as this is nothing, but our perspectives change based on our environment, based on what we have been exposed to. So I'm writing that down in my notes. That's definitely. I hope those that are listening take that soundbite right there and understand that it is a difference. That your children are impacted when they come to your schools in the most simplest way that you may not think that it is. So you kind of shared an author, but can you share some success stories of maybe a program or initiative or individual that embodies this whole idea beside you of transformation we need in education?
Totally. Thank you for that question. I think that one initiative and movement, I will say, that I'm incredibly excited about, particularly in Colorado, is this understanding that our legislators have had around the importance of apprenticeship, especially given that by 2030, 70% of careers will require post-secondary education or training. And so having apprenticeships embedded in our high schools is transformational, but necessary, right? There's some things that we like to say are transformational because they're cool. No, this is necessary. We need this for our economy. We need this to ensure that our students, when they graduate, have a sustainable wage. And we have to think differently about college and that being the only pathway towards the middle class. And so in Colorado in 2023, there was a Senate bill that passed that allowed now school districts to become sponsors and have teachers be getting that opportunity, that credit from their experiences in their school districts, and then lowering the amount of time that it takes for them to get that teacher certification when they graduate from college. So right now, we just started the process. We have one school district that has around 40 educators that are paraprofessionals. They're working with teachers. They're getting credit, college credit for the work that they're doing during the day. And will be hopefully graduating soon in the years to come and staying in that school district to ensure that we're effectively growing our own. We know that educators live and work within a 50-mile radius. And we also know that educators that are from our communities are more likely to care and to understand and therefore lead to better student outcomes. So the apprenticeship movement is one that I'm incredibly excited that we get to lead here in Colorado, and that I do think more districts and states should take on.
That's awesome. Because you use the term of growing your own. One of the things that I personally have experienced is teaching in the school that I graduated from, the hometown, and how it, as an educator, you want to do your job, but if it got to a point where I had some of my classmates' kids, or I had cousins coming through, and it's different. It's not a number, right? You're not student 57945. You're not. Your data means something different, because now you're establishing a culture within a culture, right? So yeah, it's good to hear that. That is, I'm sure it's going to have a positive impact on the school, the community, and just the future of education in Colorado.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got me all inspired. I'm definitely going to go check that out. That's worth doing some homework on right there, to find out what's happening there, because I've noticed that in Mississippi, a lot of the communities, several of the communities where they, you have those that go off and they come back to their communities and teach in that school, and it's like, yeah, it's different.
And I was a paraprofessional, as I mentioned. I was working during the day, going to school at night, bartending on the weekends, and I wish that those hours that I put in towards my paraprofessional job counted for more than just the paycheck that I got, right? That would have reduced the stress that I had those 5 years. It took me 5 years to graduate from college, because the workload was so heavy. And even within that stress that I had, I knew I was still breaking barriers, generational barriers, because when I got that $20,000 contract to be a paraprofessional, my mom, when I received my first paycheck, my mom still has the pay stub, because for the first time I was making more than both of my parents, just in that one. I believe it was $600 for a month of work, or for 2 weeks. I'm not sure, but it was a big deal. And so I understand that pay for educators is not where it needs to be. And at the same time, for people who grew up like me in poverty, it was a ticket to the middle class. It is a ticket to the middle class. It is a ticket to breaking generational poverty. It is life-changing. And so do we need to do better? Yes, we do need to pay educators more. And we also need to make sure that we understand the benefits that we receive as educators and the long time impact that it is doing for generations to come when we choose to go into the educator field. And so the apprenticeship model is just one way to open up the door to folks who may not see a pathway towards becoming an educator. And I'm excited about it. You can reach out to me if you have questions, or if you'd like to learn more about what our state's process went through and how you can implement it in your school district.
Absolutely. This is definitely enlightening. And the goal of the podcast is not to just, okay, let's reach out to someone from a state, but it's to have, as we had in the pre-conference, substance, to where now you can take this information and you can apply it to now begin to see transformation within your area. And as you were talking, this just it pops into my mind. In Mississippi, we have the Choctaw community that's there, and I just thought about it. That's something that's happening in the Choctaw nation, where they're growing their own. They're making sure that whether they start out as a paraprofessional they're taking them and they're pushing them into the local college or whatever college they want to go to, so that they can, as you stated, break their generational curse. Now you can, direct your family in a different direction, and that's important. That's one way that that can be done. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. To bringing up these points that open our eyes to how we can make a difference in many generations. So you're inspiring me, but how do you inspire and develop educators to better understand and meet this need of a diverse student population? Because that's and before you move to answering this question, I was recently in Dallas and going into Dallas, and people don't laugh at me when I go to different towns. I look at their schools and I go to their data. I look at their population within their school district, and I must publicly say, I didn't know the population, that it was a larger population of Latino and Hispanic bilingual students in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Okay, I came here to have fun, but I got educated too. So I want to throw that out there. Yeah.
I think that my style certainly is not for everyone as it relates to inspiring folks. I think for me, I'm very empathetic to the challenges that educators face, but I will also be real. And I don't like to sugarcoat the challenges that educators are experiencing and that they will experience when they enter the field. And I think more people need to be transparent in that way, because inspiration can only get you so far. And then you need resilience, and then you need grit, and then you need determination, and you need consistency, and you need commitment. And so I can only inspire you to look within yourself and really question, is this the right move for me? Why do I want to become an educator? What is inspiring me, and what will keep me inspired to stay in this field that we know has a high turnover rate within 3 years? Likewise, I like to challenge educators and leaders, particularly, to create the conditions in their buildings that will enable educators to feel safe, to feel that they're being advocated for, to feel that they can stay in the career. When we have in Colorado, for example, our teaching and learning conditions survey, which is conducted statewide biannually, we see the trends that educators share are the major concerns. And they come up to time. I need time to do the basic requirements that my job description asks of me, which is grading, lesson planning, and giving feedback to students. And then two, it's leadership. I want to feel valued. I want to feel cared for. I want to feel encouraged. I want to feel pushed. And at the end of the day, if I don't have a good leader, I don't have to tolerate this work, especially after COVID, when we found our biggest competitors in the remote environment for educators, right? And we're losing folks to these private companies that provide more flexibility to our educators. So I like to challenge, yes, educators to look within and reflect and see if this is a field that they are interested in, but then most importantly, our leaders. How are we ensuring that we're creating the conditions that will lead to a great educator workforce? And I think we need to do more education around AI and how that could enable our educators' conditions to reduce the workload and the tasks that, quite frankly, could be automated. And so I like to be, yes, inspirational, but then also with a dash of like reality check. And yeah, I hope I inspire people, but maybe I need to work harder at that and sometimes.
And here's why I'm shaking my head. because no, you don't need to work them. Here's the situation in my script that I share with the guests that I'm gonna bring on. One of the things I do is I talk about a run through, and I have it there. It's just the educator and me to kind of plan things out. But our particular interview really shifted me. Our pre-conference call shifted me to say, okay, all right, I have to make an adjustment. I have it here, but am I actually doing it? Because I shifted me based on our conference call. And that's the part that I think I'm like, okay, I got to do this a little bit more. So it's past being inspired, but I'm saying to you publicly in front of everybody, the YouTube audience and everybody, that continue being you, because what it did for me was to say, this conversation could have been totally different if we didn't have a pre-conference call.
Thank you.
That I don't want to say vibe, because that's not necessarily the thing. Your personality and who you are, you have to value that to have an authentic conversation. And I think that goes along with what's been said today, that you've kind of advocated about today, about just, it's not about just the thing, it's more components of it.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for seeing me for who I am. And again, like for allowing me the space to join you in this conversation. And I think that is, when you ask, how can we, or what advice we have for folks that want to become educators or join this field or even go into leadership. I love to say that leadership doesn't define you, it reveals you. It reveals who you are at your core. And so we have to do a lot of self-work and acceptance, right? Especially when we have expectations from stakeholders of how they want us to be as educators and leaders. And we have to be okay with not fitting into every single space, but bringing your whole identity, bringing your entire self and being into a space and ensuring that at the end of the day, folks may not like what you say, but they will respect the fact that you are true to your identity and that you are transparent. And I think that's part of being transformational, is being transparent. So again, I'm very glad that we had this opportunity to meet each other. And I'm excited to continue to see the rest of the educators that come on your podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give you, if you want, it's up to you, I'll give you the last, we call it a 2-minute warning where you got the platform. I really feel like you kind of did it there. Just kind of let me know. And then after that, I will close things out. And again, I usually ask the guests, 3 minutes afterwards, and we'll shut this down. So.
Well, thank you, everyone, for taking your time to join into the conversation, listening in. I would love to hear your thoughts about the conversation that we had, the ideas that were shared back and forth. You can reach out to me anywhere on any social media platform. Search Dr. Margarita Tovar and you'll find me. I make it incredibly easy to connect with me for that reason. I love to receive feedback, but then also love to learn. So again, I appreciate this space and I look forward to the connections that may come as a result of it.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to drop you in the background, in the backstage, and let's go. All right, guys. So I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, because when you talk about having candid conversations, that it's not about, we want to see, have these bed of roses, but true transformation is a metamorphosis. That's what transformation is, a metamorphosis. One, it starts at point A and it goes to point W in many cases. So having this conversation, I can say that I have been educated, and being educated means that I will do things and say things differently now, so that we're able to take on this task of educating all students. So again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great one. We're out.